By 2030, power will look very different, and most people aren't ready. This isn't a prediction based on ideology or optimism. It's a shift already in motion. Around the world, leadership pipelines are changing, economic influence is moving, and decision-making structures are being reshaped. The most surprising part isn't that women are gaining power. It's how quickly, quietly, and strategically it's happening. By the end of this decade, these forces will converge, and the result will be countries where women don't just participate in power, but effectively run it. Why this shift is happening now? For most of modern history, power followed a predictable path. Political leadership, economic control, and institutional authority were dominated by men, reinforced by laws, culture, and access. When that system is now under pressure from multiple directions at once. Education is the first pressure point. In many countries, women now outperform men academically at nearly every level. They graduate at higher rates, specialize in critical fields, and increasingly dominate professions tied to governance, health, law, and policy. The second force is economic. Women now control or influence the majority of consumer spending globally. Entire industries depend on female decision-makers. When economic power shifts, political power eventually follows. Always. The third force is necessity. As populations age, healthcare systems expand, and social stability becomes fragile. Leadership styles rooted in collaboration, long-term planning, and social cohesion are becoming more valuable than raw dominance. Whether governments admit it or not, they are adapting. Iceland, a blueprint. Already in motion. Iceland isn't waiting for 2030, it's already there. The country has consistently ranked at the top for gender equality, and women occupy leadership roles across government, finance, and civil institutions. Iceland has had female presidents, female prime ministers, and female-led policy revolutions that reshaped labor rights and family systems. What makes Iceland important isn't symbolism, it's outcomes. Economic resilience, social trust, and institutional stability have all benefited. By 2030, Iceland won't just be run by women in title, it will be governed by systems designed around female leadership norms. Finland, education turned into power. Finland's transformation began quietly in its schools. For decades, Finland invested heavily in education systems where women became the majority of teachers, administrators, and policy designers. Over time, this created a generation of leaders shaped by women, mentored by them, taught by them, and influenced by their values. Today, Finland has one of the highest concentrations of women in parliament and senior government roles. Leadership pipelines are already female-heavy. By 2030, Finland won't experience a dramatic takeover. It won't need one. The transition will feel natural because it already happened underneath the surface. New Zealand. Leadership redefined. New Zealand demonstrated something the world didn't expect. Female leadership during crisis outperformed traditional models. Under female-led governance, the country navigated public health, social trust, and on an international reputation with precision. The global response changed how leadership effectiveness was measured. By 2030, New Zealand's political culture will reflect that lesson. Women will dominate not because of quotas, but because voters associate female leadership with competence, calm, and credibility. Once that association forms, it's almost impossible to reverse. Rwanda. The most radical shift. No one talks about Rwanda already has one of the highest percentages of women in parliament in the world, higher than most Western democracies. After national collapse, the country rebuilt its governance structure in a way that prioritized inclusion and stability. Women became central to that reconstruction. Today, they influence lawmaking, justice reform, and economic development. By 2030, Rwanda's governance model will be studied not as an anomaly, but as an early example of post-crisis female-led power structures that actually work. Germany, economic power. First, political power. Next, Germany's shift isn't loud, it's industrial. Women increasingly dominate leadership in healthcare systems, research institutions, education administration, and corporate governance boards. These sectors shape policy indirectly by controlling data, labor, and long-term planning. Political leadership often follows economic reality. By 2030, Germany's most influential decision-makers may not always be elected officials, but women who control the systems those officials depend on. Canada. Demographics are doing the work. Canada's future leadership is being shaped by demographics more than ideology. Young voters skew female. Immigrant communities increasingly empower women through education and entrepreneurship. Public sector leadership pipelines are already majority female in many provinces. By the end of the decade, Canada's political and institutional leadership will reflect these realities. It won't feel like a revolution, it will feel inevitable. The country's people aren't watching closely enough. Some of the most dramatic shifts will happen in places few expect. In parts of Southeast Asia, women already dominate small and mid-sized enterprises. In Eastern Europe, women lead civic institutions while men exit public life due to migration or economic pressure. In parts of Africa and Latin America, women are becoming the primary stabilizers of local governance. By 2030, national power won't always sit in presidential offices. It will sit in networks, and women are increasingly at the center of those networks. Why this feels threatening to some people, power shifts always feel uncomfortable to those who benefit from the old system. This transition isn't about replacing men or reversing hierarchy. It's about changing how authority functions. Female leadership tends to redistribute power across systems instead of concentrating it in individuals. That makes traditional power structures feel weaker. Even when societies become stronger, resistance often comes from misunderstanding. This isn't about ideology, it's about results. What female-led countries tend to prioritize. Countries where women dominate leadership tend to focus on long-term stability over short-term dominance. Healthcare, education, child welfare, and infrastructure receive consistent attention. A conflict de-escalation becomes more valuable than confrontation. By 2030, as global instability rises, these priorities won't look soft. They'll look strategic. The quiet redefinition of authority. One of the biggest changes happening right now is invisible. Authority is no longer about who speaks the loudest or dominates the room. It's about who manages complexity, builds trust, and keeps systems functioning under pressure. Those skills have been undervalued for decades, and now they're essential. Women aren't taking power by force, they're inheriting it because the world needs what they already provide. Why 2030 is the tipping point? 2030 matters because generational turnover accelerates. Leadership roles across politics, business, and institutions will be filled by people shaped by different expectations. When women who entered education systems, labor markets, and leadership tracks in the early 2000s will reach peak influence. They won't be asking for permission, they'll already be in position. At that point, power won't shift suddenly, it will simply reveal itself. The countries that will be run by women in 2030 aren't guessing, they're preparing. The only real question is which societies adapt smoothly and which resist until they fracture. History shows that power never disappears, it moves. By 2030, many countries won't announce that women are in charge. They won't have to.